You will be able to see it on your screen shortly, if you can't already. Sorry, Piper. It's a light installation in the form of a ladder, suspended from the very, very high vaulted cathedral ceilings, and it features colorful shadows of ambiguous shapes. Are they people, angels? Yeah, the amorphous blobs. And they move, they ascend and descend the glowing rungs of this ladder in a stunning artistic representation of this screen we heard about a few moments ago that Madison read so beautifully for us, in which our forebear Jacob sees a celestial highway being opened between heaven and earth, with angels descending and descending between the realms. In the 3 years that I served at Grace, I was fortunate enough to see this gorgeous artwork every day. But my favorite part about Jacob's dream is not... Fiona has strong feelings about it. My favorite part isn't that it looks cool, although it does. What most visitors don't know, but the cathedral staff repeatedly agonized over during staff meetings, and probably still do to this day, is that Jacob's dream is virtually impossible to take apart. It was originally intended to be a temporary exhibit like 10 years ago. But when it came time to take it down, the artists realized there was no way they could dismantle their masterpiece without destroying it. And so they gave it to the cathedral, and it has remained up for years. It gets better. There is a switch that can turn off the LED display, say during the Easter Vigil when you want complete darkness, but said switch is inconveniently located up 10 flights of stairs and across a terrifying catwalk, way up in the rafters of the nave. It is no mean feat to turn off Jacob's dream. And isn't that the perfect metaphor? This celestial highway that Jacob glimpses in his dream is not actually a figment of his imagination or the random work of his subconscious. God is showing Jacob not what could be, but what is. Heaven and earth are bridged. The divine and the human intermingle constantly. As Christians, we believe that this bridge takes on permanent form in the person of Jesus, who came to show us once and for all that there is no power in this world or the next that can separate us from the love of God. Heaven and earth are inextricably intertwined. We cannot even begin to disentangle them. What an interesting counterpoint we have then in our gospel today. Jesus tells a fantastical story about two sowers. One who sows good seeds, wheat seeds, and another, an enemy, who sneaks into the field and sows weed seeds amidst the wheat. Now, obviously, this is an absurd tale. The very idea of purposefully harvesting enough weed seeds to be able to sow them is ludicrous at best, right? Weeds are already excellent at self-propagation. They do not need our help. But Jesus, as he so often does, is using hyperbole to make a point. Just as heaven and earth are bound up together, so are good and evil. Not just superficially, but at the root level. Life is not black and white. Even when we can identify what is a weed and what is wheat, we can't simply rip out the weeds without imperiling the crops that we have worked so hard to grow. Many of you know that I am an enthusiastic vegetable gardener, as well as an extremely crunchy ex-Californian. You can take the girl out of San Francisco, but wow. So this means that every time I have a visitor to my backyard, be it my mother or a random contractor, there is an inevitable two-part exclamation. At first they say, wow, oh my God, look at those fill in the blank. Corn, melon, tomatoes. Aren't they gorgeous? And then their eyes move from my carefully tended raised beds to my lawn, and they say, oh my God, Kristin, you have got to do something about the creepy Charlie. Because you guess it, I refuse to treat my lawn. Now, before you all start coming at me with lawn care referrals, or showing me studies about the efficacy of organic pesticides, here's my point. The ecosystem of my backyard is intricately interconnected. There is no way to treat my lawn without risking adverse effects to the broader environment, persistent weed in our garden or a sinful tendency within ourselves, we risk damaging the nearby good as well. The ecosystem of our soul is not a monoculture. There is good and evil within each of us, and it's not always clear where one starts and the other begins. Caution is warranted. When we uproot what we think is a weed, there's no guarantee that something more desirable will pop up in its place. Last summer, I spent countless hours digging violets and dandelions out of my lawn, only to discover that what grew in their place was not, in fact, the hoped-for grass, but, you guessed it, more creeping charcoal. Or, there was the year where I ill-advisedly attempted to give up sugar for Lent, only to develop a raging potato chip addiction that 6 years later I am still in the process. Messing with the ecosystem, be it our backyards or our souls, is a perilous business. Nothing is guaranteed. Separating good from evil is not a task that we can hope to accomplish by ourselves, by sheer force of will. We need God's help. And God, it turns out, often has different priorities than we do. God, I think, is more concerned with nurturing the wheat within us than ripping out every last weed. God knows that good can survive and even thrive in the midst of tremendously inhospitable growing conditions. It's a good thing, then, that celestial highway that Jacob glimpsed in his dream remains open to this day. Much like the stubbornly persistent Jacob's dream exhibit at Grace Cathedral, there is nothing we can do to shut down the flow of grace that streams from God's abundance into our lives. God's grace flows where it will, onto our weeds and wheat alike, and there is nothing we can do about it. And that, friends, is the unimaginably good news that we hear proclaimed today, that God continues to nourish the ecosystem of our souls, despite our best efforts to foil God's plans, and that there is good within us that no weeds, that no evil can ever hope to quench. Amen.
Amen.